And we're back for another one.
We are, and what a busy week. I was just thinking about this. I just saw that Amazon has bought MGM, or they're buying MGM. Do you see that?
Yeah, $8.5 billion.
Uh-huh.
It's a lot of money.
And he's stepping down, So
it'll be interesting to see how the direction of everything kind of goes.
Yep.
And really, I guess, and what's wild is it, in relation to today's topic and that story, that's one of the few industries where you can't work from home.
That's right. If you're going to film something, you got to be there.
Yeah,
right.
you got to have a studio. You got to. It's one of the few that you can't. So today's episode, today's topic, again, in true Steve and Shane fashion, we have. There's been a lot going on, and like I said, at some point we'll have an episode, I think, and kind of divulge some of all that we've got going on and how Steve and I are working together on some different things. But we've kind of tossed a topic around and landed on this topic. So I think this is relevant that we kind of start doing this as well, just so we can kind of give some love and appreciation for the people who are helping us in a passive way. But this article on Thrillist, if you want to look it up, it is titled "Digital Nomadism Isn't Going Anywhere. Here's Why," from a really, really awesome writer by the name, and I'm going to attempt to pronounce her last name because it's tricky. Christie Rotondo, I believe is her name. By the way, if anybody knows her, I've reached out to her already because I'd like to chat with her. But if anybody knows her, feel free to connect us. But great article, really, really good. Steve, it stood out to you. Quickly.
Yeah. Right. So let's just, first acknowledge so many great comments and feedback that came in from our last few episodes. And it feels like we're just having an ongoing conversation about all these trends and realities that are changing in the world of work, Yeah.
And we are in real time discussing the future of work. That's right. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
And there is no shortage of areas for us to explore. And this one today, this notion of working from home and components such as the digital nomad are part of that. But there's so many dimensions to this, and it's part of the pile of what organizations and leaders are having to deal with, that they didn't sign up for this. They didn't sign up to be leading the people from home. That's not what the business schools. There's no major in leading people in a remote category in any business school, as far as I know. And so it's a new challenge, and it's exciting for some and awful scary for the people that were raised in the school of, if I don't see you working, you're not really working. And so, we thought, and I think we're right in this, that this is top of mind for pretty much everyone. One of the articles I read said 40% of the workforce wants to stay working from home, and 70% of the workforce is working from home right now. And, on top of that, Shane, if we take a look at the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago around hotel, retail, restaurant workers, they were sent home. They weren't working from home for a while. They were home, and they were home thinking about the world differently. And that's always an area that just fascinates me around when you change the environment of anyone for an extended period, it's guaranteed to change how they see the world. And so I'm not surprised a significant portion of the world wants to stay working from home. I will say, on an aside, the circumstances of working from home are a little bit different now than they will be a year from now. Right?
Yep.
And that's so, and that always causes me pause when people say, "Hey, we're going to be working from home from now on." I'm like, really? Because the world's going to change, and maybe you're going to need something different.
Yeah. And I think that's important too. And I think it's really one of the underlying pillars in the new future of work is, if you think that you're going to predict what's going to happen in a long term, like draw a line in the sand, you're probably going to lose more times than you win that battle. Because I think that the future of work is going to be an ever evolving thing at this point with technology. Like
that's right, Shane. And here's what I understand why companies are doing that. Like, if you're a leader and you care, you want to care for the safety and security of your people. So the knee jerk is, hey, I want to let you know you're going to be safe for a while because I want you to deliver. And if you feel safe, you're going to be hopefully inspired to deliver the best for me. But that knee jerk is sort of the old leadership model, which is I'm going to take care of you. And the new leadership model, I think, should evolve into, a conversation. What needs do you have to be most productive? I'm not living in your house. I don't know if you're caring for, all kinds of unique circumstances or what the education needs of your kids are or what your Wi-Fi bandwidth is or what. So I need to learn that. And that is this is the great news, I think, of the future work is we have to understand the whole person that we're leading. It's not a worker. It's not a cell on a spreadsheet. It's not cubicle number 59. I need to know your world so that I can help best set you up for success as a human, right? And that's sort of, when I look at this, that's the big challenge. We can't separate for now. And I hope in the future we can in the future either.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where we have to, we talked about, we in multiple episodes, like you said, this has kind of been an ongoing carrying on conversation. It walking the walk and being attractive and attracting talent right now, because what you're hearing in these companies that you're meeting with, consulting with, speaking to, what you're hearing is they're trying to figure out retention, right? Or recruiting, right? So how do you do that? And we've talked about that. Why not be a place that people want to come, where they see you, right? And there was an article that actually came out today that kind of intertwines with this. And I guess let's back up for a minute. Traditional digital nomadism was, and probably still the majority of it is, people who are freelance workers and or someone working contract for an employer. So it gives you some flexibility so that you can nomadically roam and work from anywhere you have Wi-Fi, right? So that is historically how this thing came about. There's a lot of websites out there. There's magazines now. There's even travel agencies that cater only to digital nomads. I recently came across a company that I cannot remember the name of, where you can go and book out a really nice. They work out these deals with these all-inclusive resorts. And you pay a one-time subscription fee, and they have 15 or 20 of these places, and you just go and pick where you want to stay and for how long you want to stay. It's kind of like timeshares for digital nomads. They have really good internet. It's kind of a community of people, and for a lot of people, I think it is becoming, if you're in that transitional period in your life where maybe you're young and you don't have a family, or maybe you've come out of a divorce and you're mid 30s or 40s and you're like, hey, I just want some new experiences and I want to travel, but I still have a passion to work or want to work or need to work. And you have that skill set to do that. But there was an article that came out also today from a company who I have used quite a bit in my journey of entrepreneurship, HubSpot. And HubSpot, the article says why we don't care where you work from on Wednesdays or any other day. To me, this is maybe, I don't know that they, in this time period, they could put out any better of a recruiting piece out there. I don't know that they could do it. I don't know that they could do it. And so it's one of those things to where, I think that things like this are going to attract the talent in. This screams, hey. Go ahead.
Well, I look at that HubSpot situation as a bit of an outlier because not every business can afford to do that. And maybe kudos to them for their, forward-thinking thought leadership and openness to explore different models. But they're going to push the envelope, and good for them for pushing the envelope and force other organizations that are not as open, comfortable with that model to say, hey, we're a player in the game and we're going to hire people, and the people that want that may be more likely to join us than to join your firm. And so that's going to push the envelope a little bit, I don't know. And there's a side of this. I'm going to go back to, one of my LinkedIn experiences when you're a young organization, not in terms of the age of your employees, but in terms of the age of the company from founding. And you are going through what I call organization puberty. You're trying to discover your identity. You're trying to solve problems on the fly. You're trying to really discover what is your X factor, what difference can you make. When we were at that, I joined, LinkedIn was going through that early phase. It was pretty decent size, about 400, and we're starting to figure it out. The head of engineering, the head of product, were very, very adamant. In this phase of our growth, we need to be here in the same room, solving problems in real time. If we want to build a network for all the professionals in the world, if we want to be able to build the systems that support that and work together in real time, we got to be in the same room. Now, that was before obviously a pandemic reality hit, and I would love to get those guys on our show and say, okay, now, do you think it's possible that you could build and go through that organization puberty and not have everyone in person? I mean, these guys were so maniacal, Shane. They didn't even want a building with different floors. They wanted one floor where people could stand up and see where energy was, see, where, if someone was there so I can go there and have a conversation. That's how maniacal they were. And they'd seen lots of situations where they bought a company or a division was in a different location and it stunted the immediacy of problem solving. And I'm not advocating for either one.
No. Yeah. You're just sharing
I'm representing
a real world
that
experience.
point of view.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I'm representing that point of view, which I think is very real. And I came to the table like, come on, man, we're missing out on all these people that we could hire that don't have the life circumstances that can afford to live here or move here. We're cutting off a huge talent pool. Why would we do that? And then I started to see their point of view, and I was like, wow, okay, I see what you're talking about.
So let me ask you this though. Okay, so date this time period for us. When was this?
So 99. 2009, 2010.
Okay, so in the age of the internet, a long time ago.
That's right.
There's been a lot of advancement. So do you think that still? So was that due to? Or it likely was due to a couple different factors. It was likely due to their experiences of their age and their career experiences of this is how I know I can best build this. I'm in charge. I'm responsible for putting the best possible people here to put out the best possible product. That's what I'm doing. Right. That's so is that a self-awareness? Was that a self-awareness thing? Was that a fear thing of, well, I don't know if I can do it if we do this, and I do you know what I'm saying? Like, is that coming to like?
I think, well, that's getting to the reality that we're facing right now, which is nobody can say they know they can deliver more value this way, because maybe there's 2 or 3 companies. InVision App is one that I know that was founded entirely and grew to significant, substantial size, over 1,000 people, never having an office. And I do believe GitLab, similarly, has done that from the start.
That is correct. Yeah.
So we're talking, less than 0.25% of companies in the world have done this. So we've got a new pool now. That's why I say to a lot of my clients and anyone who listened to me on the street corner, we're in the age of experimentation. That's where we're at. So we got to figure this out. And if you can figure it out better than your competition, well, you're going to have a big advantage. Now, HubSpot, you just mentioned, hey, they're saying, we know we can figure this out. We trust our leadership capabilities to adjust and be able to do this with an asynchronous workforce. Work whenever you want, whenever you like. And I don't know how to pull. I would love to sit in there and be a fly on the wall for a few months and see how they pull that off and some of the challenges, because there will be ones. But that's the big pivot here. How do I get the support of my leadership team to take this on and to do it?
Yeah, and maybe so Katie Burke is who wrote this. She is the chief people officer at HubSpot. Maybe we reach out to her and say, hey, we'd love to have you on and discuss this because we find this fascinating.
Yeah.
And in it quotes a poll. It quotes a USA Today poll where you mentioned part of it, where it said 40% of Americans wish to continue working remotely after the pandemic. Right. It also says 84% of employers consider remote working a success this year.
Okay.
So now obviously we know, like so here's this dilemma, right? And you have worded this and phrased it, and we probably need to trademark it. But the great career migration, right?
That's right.
So and I think about it now, even when I'm driving around. Yesterday we went to go eat. We're selling the house, so we don't have groceries in the house. We had to go pick up some food. And we happened to drive by 2 restaurants, big signs out front, we're hiring. But then when you pull up and you kind of pass the sign, you see we're hiring at $12 an hour. Right? Well, okay, McDonald's has said they're hiring at $20 an hour. So,
yep.
You're gonna and benefits, and we're gonna pay for your college, and we're gonna do these things. Like, at what point does this become something that you get out of? And I'm not going to name the restaurants. I went by another very large national pizza chain, $9 an hour. And it's written like they took the big markers and wrote it on the glass window. Like, at what point, as either the franchisee, are you tone deaf to the reality of what's going on? Do you not care, or have you run your business poorly to where you can't afford to? And I guess there's a thing in there, I guess, a piece that potentially is all of it. But if it is, if 84%, now this is a poll that USA Today did, and who knows what demographic and who was brought in. But if 84% of all employers say it's been a success, it's been a success. My sister-in-law is a CEO of a hospital. She has said it was a success. She says in the age of digital nomadism, she says what they've actually seen is people are actually like overworking. They've had to help them shut off or help them realize that it's okay. And that kind of goes back to even a story I remember you sharing with me where you were trying to figure out, and I'm going to paraphrase some of this with some of your tech team, and you were like, hey, what can we do? What if we give you one Friday off or, whatever? And they came to you and were like, well, no, we're not going to do that because that means we're going to end up working on the weekend because of something else. And where it's like now you have to build a complete different level of trust. And like, is that even a thing now? Is that even a thing of like, do you need, like, was that trust thrust to the forefront of like, so there's so many pieces to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's unpack the one that you just mentioned, the level of trust, because what's behind that is, if I'm a leader, I need to deliver results. And how do I manage your performance when I am interacting with you in very, very different ways? This job, this company, this business wasn't designed for you to be remote. How do I measure now? I think that's a good exercise, because we shouldn't have to measure based on me seeing you do it. I should be able to measure your outcomes and results. And if I can't do that without seeing you, something's wrong.
So hold on. Okay. I'm glad you said that.
Mm-hmm.
Something's wrong with who?
Something's wrong with the leader,
okay,
or the design of the work. You know, I need to be able to figure that out, right? And because I should know, I should not have to see the work being done to know the work's been done. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. And someone's going to sort of call me out after they look at this podcast and go, oh, no, that's not true. But I'm just brainstorming with you here in real time. When I think about this, I'm like, and this is a legitimate concern I've had from several clients in the last week. Steve, how are you? And one big player here in Silicon Valley just called me, and I have monthly calls with them just around talent strategy. And they said, hey, how are you seeing other organizations thinking about performance management? Like, how are we going to do that? Is there a tool? That was the first question. I love this question because it's always the knee jerk in Silicon Valley or technology companies. There must be a tool to help us do this better. And I'm thinking, well, let's take a look at what you're solving. You're solving understanding, focusing, and getting results. That's what you want to achieve. And I said, I don't know about a new tool. There may be some, but I said, let's dial it back and ask ourselves, what are we trying to solve for? Results. And by the way, there is no institutional proof that performance reviews result in better performance for companies, just so you know. And I'm an HR person, and I'm probably going to get crucified by the Society of Human Resources for saying that, but no one's ever proven that. And I think performance appraisals has done more harm than good. Anyway, I've done rants on TikTok and other places about this, so I'm not going to go on it here. But what are we solving for? And my advice to the person I was speaking with was, I think what we're solving for is the necessity to communicate and understand and have better, faster intelligence and insights with one another. That's what we're solving for. So for me, I'm not looking for a tool. I'm looking to to raise the cadence of communication and understanding. That's what I'm trying to solve.
Yeah. So okay. So I'm gonna do something here. I'm gonna date you a little bit. Right. And I don't even know if you've even thought about this. So you know me, my brain goes to see problems and see things from a different angle. You've done this, like hiring remote is something that doesn't stress you out. It like you to think about, like you don't get anxiety to think about. It's second nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember when you first hired your first ever employee to do a job where you couldn't sit and monitor them in your journey of what you do? Like, can you think back to that? Have you ever thought back, like, to when and what that was like? And because for you, just because I know your career path, that was, I don't know, I'm guessing 20 plus years ago.
in the 90s.
Yes. Yeah.
But that was, I'll tell you what it was. I was working at Cisco, and we were building an acquisition integration team. And I just learned how to do this myself, and I had to hire 20 people and send them off to an acquisition because I couldn't do it. And we had too many going on at the same time. So I had to cover this base, team over in Sweden, team in Israel, team in Austin, Texas. And all I could do was say, here's the process, here's the flow, here's a teammate that I'm going to give you that kind of knows what they're doing. And here's my, I don't even know if we had cell phones at the time. Here's my pager. That's right.
Yes.
Here's my pager.
Yep.
That's right. And you page me if you face something. And here's the interesting thing, Shane, and I'm just thinking, this is a really cool conversation. So what it led me to have to hire on? It led me to have to hire on trust and communication and learning agility, not experience, because no one had done a lot of M&A before. So I'm like, I got to hire someone I trust. I got to hire someone who can figure this shit out. And I got to hire someone that I believe is going to express to me what the issues are.
Yep.
That's interesting, right? Yep. How many job descriptions have that? We got to trust you, you got to show a high degree of trust. Like, that's not in there traditionally.
So probably wasn't in then.
Right.
So it was internally. It didn't matter what the job description said. Internally, you were like, okay, this is what I have to do. Like, I have to. And truth be told, you probably wouldn't have put it, even if you knew, you wouldn't have worded it that way, right? So, and now for those younger folks who maybe don't think about this every day, and I'm not, by no means, I'm not ostracizing or villainizing millennials in any way, but the reality of it is even me, I take the internet for granted now. For most of my professional life, the internet to some capacity has existed. Mm-hmm. Well, you didn't have these different tools to where you knew if your employee was on working, you knew if they were, there's these different things that I've seen people, sell the HR, departments. Oh, you can know when your team is at their computer and they're doing their work and they're doing these things. Those things are they're giving you a crutch not to trust. And I think there is such value in what happened the last 12 months. If you have come out on the other side of the last 12 months and your staff, if any member, even if it was only one member of your staff, was forced to become a digital nomad on both sides of it, this is where leaders and individual contributors, I'm getting away from the word employees, individual contributors, this is where you guys need to sit down and have a summit and figure out and develop your internal process around what worked, so that you can now, if you're ever forced to, it's having that in case of glass break manual to pull out, and we've got it. We now have it. Mm-hmm. And you've got to, process matters. Your people matters. if you have this process now, because there are people who never listen, I'm gonna put myself out there. With my company with CCR, 100%. 8 years ago, I was against working remote. 100%. I am a touch it, feel it, smell it, taste it. I'm a hug guy. I'm a shake hands. I'm a, hey, let's talk. Let's catch up about life. Hey, let's take a break. Come over here. Let's have a chat. Come in my office. Let's have a chat. Let's talk. Let's catch up. I want human interaction. Right.
Yep.
So I was against it. I will tell you that I am now. I don't have a team, so it's very easy. It's much easier for me to say, but even in what you and I have done, even in the last 2 weeks, you and I have had conversations with people in 4 or 5 different countries, in different realms, doing all these different things. So it's now very much part of my DNA and how I do this. But don't you think like this is that time to where you should take and I think so, and maybe I'm wrong here, and maybe I'm going to get somebody in trouble. But I think if you're an individual contributor, if you're that team member, that employee, that staff member, and you feel like this has been great, whether even if you want to go back into the office, help your company and help your leadership group and say, I want to be a guinea pig. I'm willing to set up time. I'm willing to share. I'm willing to give you guys insight because whatever we did worked. And I want to make sure that the people who come after me have the same experience if they ever have to go through this, or if we shift to this full time or whatever.
Yeah.
There's value there. There's value there.
There's a lot of value there. And it's hard, Shane. So to use another overused metaphor, we're building the plane as we're taking off down the runway. And here's another dimension that is added to the leader's plate while they're trying to assess, how do I optimize for performance? How do I optimize for impact? I have the wellness of my employee I got to think about now. How do I do that and avoid burnout? How do I manage performance when I've never done it before? How do I set goals in meaningful ways and make sense that I understand, like, this shouldn't take hours. I need an output that is reasonable and can help the company and help this individual, right? And so I do think, it's a bit of a power shift to the individual contributor. Like, they are getting more power here, bigger raises, bigger, minimum wage. But that is hard for people. And I can just imagine my human resource peers, my leaders out there at the work going, whoa, we got to deal with wellness now. We got to deal with this whole remote thing. And how do we do that? And I was on a call with an expert on working from home, Barbie Graver, recently. And she said in her organization, if we're going to have a meeting with remote people, no 2 people can be in the room at all. Can't do it because there's just a proclivity for people who are in a similar setting to focus on the person in that room. And Shane, when you talked about your example from, what was that, about 10 years ago when you're running CCR, you also have a superpower, which is when people are around you. Now, I haven't been around you yet, but I can feel your charisma jump off the screen. And you figured out how to make that work for you. You've got like a voice, like, as my friends in the East Coast to say, you got a voice like butter. Like, you got a way. And that's something and that you've worked on, and something that you're a student of, sort of the environment. And I think we're all trying to learn how to do that and how to build that connection. And so it's a fascinating sociological experiment that we're going through right now.
Yeah. So how did you? I mean, I'm guessing your evolution in this of hiring remote started in the 90s with a company. You're at Cisco, and it's kind of been an evolving thing as technology has evolved too. So how you've done it, I'm guessing, and the mindset of when you how did you help? And so I'm trying to pull from your experiences.
Okay.
Maybe I'm going to mention this and then I'll talk for a second to kind of give you a think to think about it. But think about maybe a time where you had a manager that you needed that didn't have the experience you had, and they needed to go hire remote, or they needed a really key contributor and the best person was remote, or whatever that is, and how you maybe helped, some steps you gave them, or how you helped instill the confidence in them that they're going to make the right decision. Because I can tell you, I don't have nearly the experience of hiring as many people as you do. I don't have that. So for me, it definitely came down to, holy cow, like I don't know if I trust myself, and like I'm afraid of I'm going to make a mistake and miss something because this person isn't going to be here and I don't know how to do that. And there's not a lot of people that you, especially 10 years ago, there's not a lot of people you can just turn to and find, because like not everybody fits in the same box. So I'm curious because I think sharing some experience or giving some insight would be helpful in that realm.
So I got a few stories from my experience, and also not too distant past. So I think it was just about 10 years ago at Yahoo, they appointed a new CEO. Her name was Marissa Mayer. She was a superstar from Google. And the first thing she did was take a look at, well, not the first thing. Among the early things that she did was she took a look at who's working from home, because apparently there was a fair number of people. And then she took out the VPN logs to see which remote workers were logging in and which weren't. And within a few weeks, guess what? No more remote workers.
Yeah.
So, which is interesting. I mean, just because someone's not logging in on VPN, I would argue to challenge that decision doesn't mean they're not working, but that's the decision. And it was a shot across the bow. How could this woman CEO, mother, who should have a greater level of empathy, or should have a high degree of empathy for working parents who may have some special needs at home, do that? And anyway, it was a decision that she took. In my own experience, Shane, as you know, I lived in Asia for 2 years. And for the first time in my career, when I went to Asia, I went to the field. Okay. Now, this is different from working from home, because I'm going to a field office. But prior to that, and those people listening in who've been in headquarters most of their life, you probably asked yourself at one point, like, how come all those people in the field are always complaining? And how come, they're like, well, those people in headquarters don't understand us, and they don't know what's going on. They don't know what's what, or they don't understand our culture, this and that. And so I always had an edge about, I'll field people, just a bunch of, complainers. It's not all great being here with the executives. Like, you got to dress nicer and you got to be on your game. And, you can't just show up with your dogs in the office. Like, the field can get away with a lot. So that's worth a lot.
Yeah. So
I remember being in Asia for like 2 weeks, and some memo came from headquarters that, hey, you're going to have to do this process. And I'm thinking, like, that's not going to work in Asia. Like, I've only been here 2 weeks, but that's not going to fly here. And so it took me 2 weeks to go, I don't know what those people in headquarters are doing. So when I look at this exercise that we're going through, it is, I think, long-term going to be one of the healthiest things that all of us have gone through, because we're having to learn how to lead differently, in different ways, in different means. And that is great muscle for us to build. Yeah. But I will tell you another thing that people are going to struggle with, and this is kind of a little bit of an edgy, sensitive topic.
That's okay.
Is corporate politics. We've all worked in those places where that someone or those people know how to work the boss, and they do it better than you, and they outflank you, and they get the coffee for the boss, or whatever.
It exists. That's right. Yes,
it exists. And this has thrown those people off their game, and that is a beautiful thing. And just reflecting back on my Singapore experience, I went out to Singapore as someone who I felt I was in pretty good standing. I mean, for a company to send a guy my age in a region of the world that I'd only been to, like a friend's wedding in Hong Kong once, I'd never been to Asia before, to lead that whole region, that's a big vote of confidence. So I'm walking out there feeling like, hey, I got great relationships at headquarters. I mean, 1 year in, and all the people that wanted to, that were jealous of my, position, or, they told some of the other HR people that, where I stood in the ranking, and they were not happy with that. Pretty soon I went from being like the golden child to being like the pariah. Like, people are coming at me. I'm like, what happened? I'm the same person. I'm just not there in the setting, in the political setting, to sort of not look like I grew a second head, or not look like I'm a drunken sailor, or I don't know what happened, but you are low hanging fruit for the political beast when you are out of sight, out of mind, and people, and that's a sad truth that I had to live through. It ultimately led to me like leaving the company, because I'm like, hey, if this is more about relationships and politics, this is not the place for me. And I wound up leaving. But it is an experience I will never forget. Like, going with the best relationships, being remote, and all of a sudden they eroded like almost overnight. It was amazing to me.
So let me ask you this. So you've been working from home. The last, obviously the last 12 months, but longer than that, kind of building your own brand and doing your own thing. I have, obviously, for the last 2 years. And I did some in the early days of starting CCR as well. Just, we didn't need an office. So there are a lot of challenges that come along with it. And individually, as the person doing the work from home, whether it's a leader, whether it's a team member, individual contributor, what have you, there are some challenges. And I can tell you that from my own personal experience, I took the unhealthy route. I worked way too much. I learned that the hard way. Some of it was by design, probably, and some of it was by circumstance. So when I started CCR in the early days, so I did not take a salary from CCR in the first 4 years. So any profit that was made, I reinvested back into the business, marketing to grow it, those kind of things. My wife had our first child together. So I was daycare for the first year, and then we were blessed enough to live here, to where have some in-laws, and they kind of stepped in after the first year to kind of take over as I needed the business to then take me on to a more traditional role, I guess you would. And I mean, my routine was, so I can empathize. I can only imagine what some of these people who were thrust into this. My routine was, I had my daughter at home. So my wife would leave. My wife's a school teacher. She would leave at 7:00 in the morning. So I would have the baby from 7:00 in the morning until she would get home about 3:30. 3:30, I do all the cooking at my house. So 3:30, my wife would come. I would hand her the baby. That's kind of the handoff, right? You hand her the baby. I would cook dinner. We would eat dinner by 5:00. And then I would go into my little office in the garage that didn't have any AC, and because it was kind of a makeshift thing where we were, and that's what you had to do. And I would sit there and work until the baby would cry in the middle of the night. So when it needed to be fed, my wife breastfed. So I would have to get up. And so I learned, I'm a seasoned dad. This wasn't my first child, my wife's first. So I would get up, go get my daughter, and they teach you this trick. So I'm going to share some little tricks here as a dad too, I guess. But they teach you this trick to keep your fingernail on your pinky cut down real low. And then you can place the padding of the pinky up in the roof of the mouth, and they'll use that. We didn't use pacifiers and things like that. So she would sit on my lap, and I'm right-handed. So she would sit on my lap on my left finger, and you'll appreciate this, being a sports guy. So I have a basketball injury where my finger does not extend.
Oh no, I do not want to see that.
Yeah. So she would lay across my lap, and I would buy my wife an extra 30, 45 minutes. And in the sleep world, as a mom, being exhausted, that's golden. So I learned to type and do everything one-handed. So I would go through, and then I would work until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd go sleep for 4 or 5 hours, wake up, and then did it all. And there was never really an off button, because even during the day, having my daughter, I'm taking phone calls. She's napping. I'm outside trying to talk quiet on a call and, do these things. So it's not really a traditional schedule. And you have to be aware of these things. I will tell you that your mental health, I would say working from home, your mental health is probably more important to prioritize than your physical health.
Right.
If you were going to prioritize one over the other. Because, and even more so now, like my wife and I are on this new journey now, as you know, and now she's working from home. There's this now new dynamic to where now I got to work around her schedule. Right. So now it's just not my schedule that I got to work around, because now she's home and she might be on a call, and then she doesn't need me in the background yapping. So, these different things. So it's a difficult thing. It's tough. It's not glamorous. It's not, there is freedom that comes along with it, but I will tell you, it takes time to figure it out. No one is born, not in today's world, no one is born to be able to just navigate and know when to shut it off and know when to take a break and not feel guilty. Because there's times you feel guilty. It's like, oh, should I be, maybe I should just really be, even though I'm not concentrating right now and I'm not getting quality work done right now.
That's right.
Like, go play your video game. I don't drink. I don't party. I don't do drugs.
Yeah.
I play the Xbox every now and then. I'll sit down and get into a world of, you didn't know that about me, but I go and sit on the Xbox and I play the Xbox, play 15, 20 minutes, because I can't think about anything else.
What game are you playing, Shane?
I'm a Call of Duty Warzone kind of guy. Okay. Go kill some people, go kill some people.
Sure, I've got that game here
come
somewhere.
Back to the come back to the office, right? So for me, again, it allows me to check out for a minute. It allows me to go to not shut my brain off. I think sometimes we say you can't shut your brain off. It allows me to disconnect purposefully to my work. So then,
well, there's someone I heard recently made a very brilliant statement, which is, today we need a sustainable mindset, not a situational mindset. And I think, to sort of bring this conversation back to the very first article that you were quoting, and thank you for sharing that the personal dimensions of adjustment and family trade-offs and work trade-offs. And, as a new parent, I remember wanting the intellectual stimulation of work and thinking that a business trip was God's, present to me to let me get some sleep. And then I would go on these business trips and I'd miss my kids the next day and be like, this sucks. I want to be home, and the first time I was like, woo, no kids crying. And then I'm like, man, I miss my kids. It was just almost instantaneous. And, and just like being a new parent, we discovered this at LinkedIn. And I've seen this play out in everyone I know who's had their first child. Your worldview changes more when you have your first child than almost any event in your life. You can't even explain that to people. When you see a news program and some child has been beaten, when you don't have a child, it's bad news. When you have a child, you get a visceral, like,
hair stands up on your arm.
I want to hurt somebody, as a man. That is not right. And so, what I loved about that article that you cited, which is, what is it? The Nomad, the digital nomad is not going anywhere. What I love about that article is the whole main point of her article is, it's not going anywhere because at the end of the day, we're going to want to be around people we care and people we love, and we want to be caring for people. And so while you've got the young youth, no kids, independent moment in your life, go enjoy and drink from that fountain. There's nothing wrong with that, and fill your life with experiences. But at some point, the fountain's going to run dry and your heart's going to miss being connected to your family and to your community. And what's interesting about this, she didn't say this in the article, but I'm just thinking about it now as I'm processing this, and that's why I love our conversations. That community at work, like, what's that look like now? And I used to advise companies, you have an opportunity here in this world where I don't need to talk to my neighbors about getting a stick of butter or borrowing some eggs. I don't need to talk to them about anything because I can order everything I need online and I don't need them for anything. And I've come around on that, saying, well, that's a shame, because you're missing out on helping someone, and you're missing out on giving them the chance to help you. You're missing out on having another perspective that there's other people with bigger problems than yours, which may diminish in your mind your own problems. And so I don't know how we build community in this world. And isn't that an interesting part of this conversation?
Yeah. So you just caused me to think about something that I think was going to be really curious to follow the data on. What happens now when these companies who have been remote for 18 months force their staff to come back to the office? I'm curious to see how production rises, falls, stays flat in the first 30 to 60 days of doing that, because we're communal animals, right? What would happen right now if I were to say, hey, Steve, let's you and I spend a weekend digging in and getting some work done, and I'm going to come out there. Well, you and I have never been in person. And what's going to happen? Well, the first day, we're probably not going to get anything done, because we're probably just going to be sitting around talking, catching up, sharing stories.
That's right. Building a relationship. That's right.
Imagine these people now who either have never met the people they're working with, or let's say they work with 10 team members, and they've been working with them for years. They know all of them. But they haven't had the same interaction and communication. Life has happened. People have gotten pregnant. People have had babies. People have gotten divorced. People have gotten promotions. People have sold houses. All these sports have happened. All these things that we talk about in the work week, after hours, the things that we get together with, right? Those mixers that you were getting together for drinks on Friday after work with your team, and those things haven't happened. So now when we're back in, there's going to be some empathy with leadership and say, let's have some community hours. You just spend the first hour of work and the last hour of work. Don't even work. Just catch up with your team. Catch up with your coworker. Just catch up. Just share stories.
Yeah, I would tell you, Shane, you got my mind spinning as sort of the HR brain of how do I get my team back focused and working. And if it's the order came down from above, we're all get back together. And what I would probably do is do like a new hire orientation, but I would call it a return to work reconnection or something like that. And I would have it be over the course of a week. Honestly, I would say for the first few hours every day, we're going to allow people to tell their story. We're going to allow people to share what this experience, the ups and the downs and the pros and the cons have been. We're going to brainstorm how are we going to come back to life and really make a difference. And what you do when things are tough is you focus your eyes on the prize. So like you get them focused on something bigger and better, and we're going to make an impact on the world like nobody's business. And yes, it's going to be hard for the next few weeks as we get different rhythms of times and school pickups and daycare drop-offs and all that, and groceries, and how, we have to figure out like, oh crap, I got to do my dry cleaning on the weekends again. And it's always crowded. Like we're going to have to help people express themselves and spew and work it out, and then help support them to get back. If you just say get back to work and we don't have that moment, I think you're going to get some pushback. And I think it's going to, as you say, block the productivity, block the engagement. And that could be really counterproductive for you.
Yeah, Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and I think we could go really, really deep on this, in another episode. But it's wild. It's wild to think about, and I'm glad. I think this is a perfect place to end it, because it kind of creates a thought process. So if you've listened this far, I would actually love, if you're a leader, I would actually love to hear. And I know Steve would too. We would love to hear from anybody on what you're doing and how you're doing that, and do you like if you say, okay, we're going to be in the office, but now you have more flexibility in the office, meaning if you're not customer facing, if it's easier for you to be in the office for 4 hours and then go home and pick your kids up from school or help your kids finish up homeschool or whatever it is, and then come back in after hours, historically after hours, who cares as long as you're getting the work done like that? Like that's really all that should matter. It doesn't, but it should. So yeah, I think this is good. I think, digital nomadism. I'm a digital nomad, I guess. My wife is now a digital nomad. And we're gonna lean into that. You're gonna see that. So my background is gonna start changing in the next few episodes because this won't be. I'm gonna be in some random spots. So actually, my new camera that's going to be traveling with me, that was the very first part of the guy. Funny story: the guy would not let my son sign for the camera, even though I'm sitting right here. So I had to give him my wallet, go show my ID, and then he popped down and had to give me a thumbs up. Like, is it okay if this kid signs for this? So it's interesting.
Well, good. Well, everyone, thank you for listening in this far. Please like, share, rate the podcast. This is the Work Week After Hours, and I'm Steve Cadigan with
Shane Howard.
And we really appreciate your time and your engagement here, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Cheers.